Dr. Phil McGraw has heard thousands of stories over 25 years. Stories of betrayal, addiction, loss, triumph. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, he heard something that made him freeze completely. Not pause. Not hesitate. Freeze. His hand went to his mouth. His eyes widened. And for the first time in his career, he couldn't find words. What happened in that studio wasn't just television. It was the moment a daughter read the words her mother spent 15 years writing but was too afraid to say out loud. The guest's name was Emily Harris. 26 years old, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a simple gray sweater. She didn't look like someone who was about to stop a television production cold. She looked nervous, holding a wrinkled white envelope in trembling hands. Dr. Phil began the segment like any other. Emily, you wrote to us saying you needed to share something your mother left behind. Tell us what brought you here today. Emily's voice cracked immediately. My mom passed away 3 months ago from cancer. And before she died, she gave me this. She held up the envelope. She told me not to open it until I was ready. I opened it last week. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his expression softening. This was familiar territory, grief, loss, unspoken words. He'd navigated this thousands of times. What's in the envelope, Emily? A letter, she whispered. A letter she wrote to me when I was 11 years old. I'm 26 now. She kept it for 15 years. The audience shifted in their seats. Something about the way Emily held that envelope, like it contained something both precious and terrifying, made everyone lean in. Dr. Phil's tone became gentler. Do you want to tell us what the letter says, or would you prefer to? I want to read it. Emily interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. She couldn't say it. But I can read it. She wanted me to read it. Dr. Phil nodded. Take your time. Emily's hands shook as she pulled out 2 pages of lined notebook paper, covered in handwriting that leaned heavily to the right. The kind of handwriting that came from someone who wrote slowly, carefully, choosing every single word. She began to read. My sweet Emily. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm so sorry. The studio went completely silent. Not the manufactured silence of television. Real silence. The kind where you can hear the lights humming. Emily continued, her voice breaking. I need to tell you something I should have told you when you were 11. When it happened. When you came to me crying, saying you didn't want to go to Uncle Ray's house anymore. Dr. Phil's expression changed. The professional warmth was still there, but underneath it, something darker flickered across his face. Recognition. I didn't believe you, Emily. You told me what he did. You told me he touched you. And I didn't believe you. The audience gasped. Several women put their hands over their mouths. Dr. Phil sat perfectly still. Emily was crying now, but she kept reading. I told myself you were confused. That you were making it up for attention. That Ray would never. He was my brother, Emily. My big brother. And I chose him over you. The pages rustled in Emily's shaking hands. For 15 years I watched you struggle. Your anxiety. Your depression. The way you couldn't trust anyone. The way you flinched when men got too close. And I knew. Deep down, I always knew. I was just too much of a coward to admit I'd failed you. Dr. Phil stood up. Not dramatically. Not for the cameras. He just stood, walked over to Emily, and placed his hand on her shoulder. The cameras kept rolling, but he wasn't performing anymore. This was real. Stop the tape, Dr. Phil said quietly to the crew. Just stop. The red lights on the cameras blinked off. The audience didn't move. Nobody moved. Dr. Phil knelt down beside Emily's chair, eye level with her. Sweetheart, look at me. Look at me. Emily looked up, tears streaming down her face, still clutching the letter. Are you sure you want to keep reading this? We don't have to. I have to. Emily sobbed. She couldn't say it. But I have to. Dr. Phil looked at the producers in the booth. Turn the cameras back on. She needs to finish this. The red lights came back on. Emily took a shuddering breath and continued reading. By the time I realized what I'd done to you, I didn't know how to fix it. How do you tell your daughter that you failed her in the worst possible way? That you let a monster hurt her because you were too afraid to believe the truth? Emily's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm dying, Emily. The cancer is everywhere. And I'm running out of time to tell you that you were right. You were always right. And I am so sorry. Somewhere in the audience, a woman started crying. Then another. Then several more. This wasn't the polite, camera-ready tears of daytime television. This was collective grief. Dr. Phil's jaw was clenched. His eyes were red. In 25 years of television, through every imaginable human tragedy, he'd maintained professional composure. But not now. Emily kept reading through her tears. I reported Ray to the police last month. I gave them everything. My statement. The dates you told me. Everything I should have done 15 years ago. They arrested him yesterday. The studio erupted. Not in applause. In gasps. In sobs. In that collective release of breath that happens when truth finally breaks free. He's going to prison, Emily. Because of you. Because you were brave enough to tell the truth even when your own mother wouldn't believe you. You saved other girls. Girls I could have saved if I'd been brave 15 years ago. Dr. Phil turned away from the cameras, his hand over his face. The crew kept filming, but they were crying too. The boom operator. The camera guys. Everyone. Emily's voice was barely audible now. I love you, Emily. I failed you, but I love you. And I need you to know, none of this was your fault. Not what Ray did. Not my cowardice. Not any of it. You were 11 years old. You were a child. And you deserved a mother who believed you. She finished the last line. I hope someday you can forgive me. But if you can't, I understand. Love, Mom. Emily folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, and held it against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Dr. Phil sat back down in his chair. For 30 seconds, an eternity in television, he said nothing. The audience said nothing. Emily said nothing. Then Dr. Phil spoke, and his voice was thick with emotion. Emily, I need you to hear me. Are you listening? She nodded. Your mother spent 15 years carrying the weight of what she did. But you... His voice broke. You spent 15 years carrying the weight of what was done to you and the betrayal of not being believed. And you survived. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Emily wiped her eyes. I just wanted people to know she tried. At the end, she tried. Dr. Phil shook his head. She did more than try, sweetheart. She made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. She made sure justice happened. It was 15 years late, but it happened. He turned to the audience. How many of you know someone who told the truth and wasn't believed? Raise your hands. Over half the studio raised their hands. Some raised both hands. How many of you are that person who wasn't believed? Nearly everyone's hands went up. Including some of the crew. Including Dr. Phil's longtime producer, who was watching from the wings with tears running down her face. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up and addressed the audience directly. We're going to take a break. But before we do, I need to say something. Not as the host. As a human being. He looked directly at Emily. What your mother did, not believing you, was wrong. Profoundly wrong. And the fact that she acknowledged it, that she acted on it, that she made sure Ray faced consequences, that doesn't erase the 15 years you lost. It doesn't undo the damage. But it matters. He turned back to the audience. If you're watching this at home, and you're that child who told the truth and wasn't believed, I believe you. Right now. Whoever you are. Whatever happened. I believe you. The audience stood up. Not because they were prompted. Not because applause signs flashed. They stood because they needed to. They stood and they applauded through tears, and it was the most cathartic moment in Dr. Phil's entire career. During the commercial break, Dr. Phil did something he'd never done before. He asked the producers to clear the studio. Just me and Emily. 5 minutes. The audience was ushered out. The crew stepped back. For 5 minutes, Dr. Phil sat with Emily in an empty studio and talked to her about trauma, about healing, about the long road ahead. Nobody knows exactly what was said. The cameras were off. But when they returned, Emily looked different. Not healed. You don't heal from that in 5 minutes. But seen. Truly seen. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. When they came back from commercial, Dr. Phil had brought someone else onto the stage. A woman in her 40s, wearing a blazer and carrying a folder. Emily, this is Dr. Sandra Martinez. She runs a trauma center specifically for survivors of childhood sexual abuse who weren't believed by their families. She's here because I called her during the break. Dr. Martinez sat down next to Emily. Emily, your mother's letter is going to help so many people. But today, we're going to help you. Dr. Phil and I talked, and we'd like to offer you a full scholarship to our residential treatment program. 6 months. Fully funded. With therapists who specialize in exactly what you've been through. Emily started crying again. I can't afford that. I work at a grocery store. You're not paying, Dr. Phil said firmly. The show is covering it. Every penny. Transportation. Housing. Everything. You came here to honor your mother. Now let us honor you. The audience, watching on monitors backstage, erupted in applause loud enough to be heard through the walls. Dr. Martinez opened her folder. I also brought something else. After your mother reported Ray to police, her statement helped them identify 3 other victims. 3 other girls he hurt. Those girls are adults now. And they wanted you to have this. She handed Emily a card. Emily opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for being brave when we couldn't. Thank you for having a mother who finally did the right thing. You saved us from having to testify. He took a plea deal because of your mother's evidence. We're finally free because of you. Emily collapsed into sobs. Not the gentle TV crying. The kind of crying that comes from 15 years of carrying weight you were never supposed to carry. Dr. Phil pulled her into a hug and just held her while she shook. The cameras captured it all. Not exploitatively, but as a document of real human connection. Of what happens when someone's truth is finally, completely believed. After the show, Dr. Phil did something else unprecedented. He went to his dressing room and called Emily's mother's oncologist. I need to know something. Did she know? Before she died, did she know Ray was arrested? The oncologist confirmed it. She died 2 days after his arrest. She held on just long enough to know he couldn't hurt anyone else. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. 3 months later, Emily sent Dr. Phil a letter from the treatment center. She was doing the work. The hard, painful work of healing. In the letter she wrote, she spent 15 years being a coward. Then she spent her last month being brave. That doesn't erase the 15 years. But it's something. Dr. Phil kept that letter in his desk drawer. It represents what his show is supposed to be, a place where truth can finally be spoken. The episode became the most watched Dr. Phil episode in 5 years. The Trauma Center received over 10,000 applications within a month. Donations poured in. Dr. Phil started each subsequent show the same way. If you told the truth and nobody believed you, I believe you. A year after the episode aired, Emily appeared on the show again. This time, she was different. Stronger. She'd completed treatment. She was back in school, studying social work. She wanted to help other survivors. And she brought something with her. The envelope. Her mother's letter. She'd had it framed. I keep it on my wall, she told Dr. Phil. Not because it makes everything okay, but because it reminds me that even people who fail us catastrophically can still do one brave thing. And that one brave thing can save lives. Dr. Phil looked at that framed letter, 2 pages of lined paper covered in slanted handwriting, and understood something profound. Healing isn't about perfect apologies or erasing the past. It's about the messy, complicated truth that people can be cowards and heroes, sometimes in the same lifetime. Your mother couldn't say the words, Dr. Phil said. But she wrote them. And you read them. And now thousands of people are getting help because you were brave enough to share your story. Emily smiled, a real smile, not the broken one from a year ago. She was too afraid to say it. But I wasn't too afraid to read it. And that made all the difference. That envelope sits in Dr. Phil's office now, next to Emmy Awards and photos with presidents. Because to him, that envelope represents something more important than any award. The moment when silence finally broke, when truth finally spoke, when a daughter's courage and a mother's last act of bravery changed lives forever. The episode ended with information scrolling on screen, resources for survivors, hotlines, treatment centers, ways to help. But the real ending came months later, in the quiet moments when survivors watched that episode alone in their rooms and thought, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe it really happened. Maybe I deserve to be believed. Dr. Phil McGraw has heard thousands of stories. But he'll never forget the day Emily Harris read her mother's letter. The day the studio froze. The day silence turned into truth. And the day he learned that even the words we're too afraid to say can still, eventually save lives. Epilogue. This story isn't just about Emily. It's about every person who ever told the truth and wasn't believed. Every child who spoke up and was silenced. Every survivor who carried the weight alone. Emily's mother waited 15 years. But she didn't wait forever. And in her last act, she chose her daughter. She chose truth. She chose justice. That envelope, simple, white, wrinkled from being held so many times, became a symbol. Not of perfection. Not of easy forgiveness. But of the complicated truth that healing is possible even after catastrophic betrayal. Dr. Phil keeps a copy of that letter in his desk. On days when television feels meaningless, when the work feels performative, he reads it. And he remembers why he does this job. Because sometimes, the most powerful words are the ones someone was too afraid to say out loud. But when someone else is brave enough to read them, those words can change the world.